Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Welcome back to another episode of our Entitled People series, where you'll hear stories about people who think they can do no wrong and believe they're above everybody else. Take, for example, this lady who sent in her impressive resume and had the audacity to include that she holds the ranking of a military spouse. As if that matters. Friends, if you owned a company, would you hire someone who felt entitled enough to add their status as a military spouse on their resume, as if it would instantly propel them to the top of the candidate list? Let's not even get started on how entitled that is. On a lighter note, there's this dog at a daycare who finds the fluffiest dogs to nap on. It's absolutely adorable, but at the same time it must be annoying for the other dogs. She doesn't care though. She's entitled. In this episode, my friends, you're going to hear 4 stories. The first one is short and sweet, about a Karen complaining about Halloween decorations. The second story is a subscriber submission from Lauren H., detailing her time in retail where she encountered a wild Karen. The third story is about an entitled woman who gets put in her place by the original poster's boss. So, strap yourselves in and get ready to cringe at how ridiculously entitled some people can be. I hope you stick around for the stories today, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more in the future. Let's dive in, my friends. I own a small party store. Naturally, as Halloween approaches, we primarily stock spooky Halloween decorations and costumes for sale. Yesterday was a peaceful day until a Karen walked in. She had the stereotypical haircut and was accompanied by 2 poorly behaved kids. Immediately, she started complaining that all the decorations were satanic and didn't align with the true spirit of Halloween. My employee, who is Wiccan, asked her what she meant by that. Karen replied, claiming that Halloween was originally about Jesus and that we were all sinning by leaving him out of it. My Wiccan employee tried to educate her about the pagan origins of the holiday, but Karen was unrelenting and became extremely disrespectful. Meanwhile, her kids wandered off. A minute later, I caught them destroying the decorations by the window because their mommy didn't like them. I politely asked them to stop, but they refused. Karen overheard this and screamed at me to leave her kids alone, threatening to call the police and accuse me of abusing them. I calmly told her, "Ma'am, please leave the store. You're being very disrespectful to my property and my workers." She insisted that I was trampling on her rights as an American to be wherever she wanted. I then called security from the department store across the street, who promptly escorted her and her kids off the premises. Last night, she left a very angry, one-sided review on her Facebook page, claiming we harassed her for no reason. Most commenters saw through her nonsense, but many said I went too far by calling private security to remove them against their will. My cousin even said this when I told him, calling me a horrible person for taking things too far. I personally don't think so. The kids were literally destroying my merchandise. What was I supposed to do? Just stand there and watch as Karen allowed her kids to keep wrecking things? Friends, I want to ask, do you think I'm a horrible person for getting private security to escort Karen from the store? Or was I taking things too far? Leave your comments below. Next story. Back in the summer of 2000, I landed a job working as a cashier at Kmart. Our town is small and used to be booming, but after decades of decline, Kmart was the only department store left standing. This store was vital because a large portion of our population didn't drive, and the next closest store was several miles away. Everyone from all walks of life shopped here. After a few days of training and shadowing other cashiers, I was finally cut loose and stationed at the only other register where customers could buy tobacco products. During the morning hours, I was thrilled because I had room to pace around, wasn't expected to tidy up around the registers, and it was right beside our little Caesar's Cafe. I may have been a 17-year-old teenage girl at the time, but I was 5 feet 10 inches tall, weighed 150 pounds, and had inherited a serious case of resting grumpy face. Even though I wasn't a popular kid, I had a bit of a sharp tongue, so no one ever tried to fight me. I thought I looked tough because I wore combat boots, wallet chains, and my dad's old Navy dungarees. That streak ended one day when a customer tried to assault me about an hour into my shift. I was feeling great. I had that overly sweet customer service voice down pat, and every customer I served was just as kind in return. This job was awesome, working with the public was awesome, and life was wonderful until I met an entitled mother and her daughter. The daughter was clearly younger than me. I was entering my senior year at the local high school and had served as a teacher's aide the previous year, so I'd seen a good cross-section of our student body. The daughter had very long, frizzy, dark red hair, which was quite striking. I was certain I had never seen her at school before. My gut told me she was likely entering her freshman year in the fall. When they approached my register, I noticed they had no merchandise with them, and were both staring at the cigarette wall with intense focus, as if I wasn't even there. I said, "Hi, welcome to Kmart. Is there anything I can help you with?" The entitled mother ignored me, crinkling her nose while nodding her head side to side, as if mulling something over. After a minute of silence, she turned to her daughter and said, "Okay, I can swing too. What would you like?" The daughter replied, "Newport Menthol Kings." The mother then turned to me and finally acknowledged me, saying, "Yeah, I'll take 2 packs of Pall Mall Red Hundreds and 2 packs of Newport Menthol Kings." I was shocked. In my state, anyone over the age of 16 could sell cigarettes to a customer, but you had to be at least 18 to purchase them. During training, they drilled into our heads that if we suspected a customer planned to supply tobacco or alcohol products to a minor, we were not allowed to sell those products to them. I wasn't naive enough to think this would never happen, but I didn't expect it to be so blatant and so soon. I said, I'm going to need to see some ID." The entitled mother smiled, seeming flattered that I asked, and handed me her driver's license. She said, "Here you go." I replied, "Thanks, but I'm going to need to see her ID as well," as I pointed to her daughter while handing the license back. The daughter's eyes widened, and she quickly turned to her mom, looking panicked. The mom waved her ID back in my face and said, "Excuse me? What do you mean? I'm the one buying them." I told her, "While that's true, it's against the law for me to sell tobacco to you if I know it's being given to a minor." The mother replied, "I can't believe this. They're for me, see?" She then pulled out an empty pack of Pall Malls from her purse and said, "I'm all out. I'm buying them for myself." I told her, "I see that, but you just asked your daughter what type of cigarette she wanted while standing right in front of me." The mother's face turned red, and she had the nerve to act offended. She then told me that was a private conversation that didn't concern me. Her daughter chimed in saying, "What the heck is wrong with you? Stop being nosy!" The mom added, "You have no right to tell me what I can and can't do. Just ring up the smokes now." Before I could get out a sentence, she let out a guttural scream and tried to jump over the counter, swinging and clawing at me while yelling a storm of insults. Thankfully, there was plenty of space at this register, and I needed every bit of it to dodge her attempts to attack me. I was so focused on the mother's chaos that I barely noticed the daughter. It felt like forever, before the daughter grabbed the back of her mom's shirt and frantically tried to pull her back, screaming, "Mom, Mom!" The mother was still spewing insults at the top of her lungs and making threatening gestures when she glanced at her daughter and went pale. She snatched her purse and her daughter's arm, backed away from the counter, and then bolted out the door while trying to act like they weren't running for the hills, muttering insults under their breath. I was left standing there, my back pressed against the cigarette wall, silent but internally freaking out. I looked to see what could have freaked them out so badly. I saw a pretty chill-looking customer, a big man in his 40s, and one of my managers approaching. I was confused, as there was nothing intimidating about either of them, but I was relieved that they scared the pair off. My manager was out of breath, clearly having sprinted across the store when she heard the yelling, but she had a huge smile on her face. She asked, "Are you okay?" I wasn't shaking, but my voice was, and I said, "Yeah." The man said, "I'm glad you're fine. I can come back to check out later if you need a break." I snapped out of it, let out a chuckle, and said, "No, I think I can get through this sale." The man placed his items on the counter and started smiling from ear to ear, looking back and forth between my manager and me. He then said, "You did great there, kiddo. Don't let the fools intimidate you. You did the right thing." I thanked him as my manager came behind the counter and hugged me. I finished the transaction and he turned, smiled at my manager and said, "Well, I'm off to make a very important phone call." My manager was trying to hold in her laughter and said, "I can't believe how big Emily is getting." The man nodded, absolutely beaming as if this was one of the best things he'd ever heard. He then said, "I hope you have a much better day, young lady." My manager giggled, seeming like she was about to burst with excitement as she repeated the sentiment while he walked away. She told me she was very proud of me, and then explained why she and the man were so amused once they realized I was fine. He wasn't just a totally chill customer, he was the chief of police. Considering that the entitled mom and daughter instantly recognized him without a uniform, and that the manager was on a first-name basis with him, I think it's safe to assume they all knew each other very well. Such class acts. I wish I could have heard that very important phone call. That's the thing with small towns. Everybody pretty much knows one another. I wonder what crazy gossip spread around the town about that mother and daughter. Probably nothing good, since she's out buying cigarettes for her underage kid. But who am I to judge? I've been joking that I've been smoking like a chimney since I was 7. Not true at all, but you wouldn't know. Next story. A few years ago, I had a side hustle on my days off. My job had a rotational schedule where I worked 2 weeks and then got 2 weeks off. I made plenty of money at my job, but it didn't hurt to earn a little extra cash. I was essentially a tour guide for the region I lived in. I didn't have planned tours. I usually just took people to see unique places they wouldn't know about or think to visit. I was adamant about getting paid up front, and customers signed an agreement guaranteeing they'd protect my truck from messes or damage. Fortunately, I never had any issues, and people always enjoyed the places I showed them, as the views were absolutely breathtaking, except for one family. They seemed friendly enough when I had them sign the contract and collect my fee. I should mention my fee was $15 an hour plus $75, or $35 for half a day. This covered a tank of fuel plus paid for my time shuttling them around. I also kept a cooler with free water and some limited snacks. They were paying for my knowledge of the region, plus insights about the area's history. Plenty of times, customers told me they'd never seen so much cool stuff in one day. But back to this family, once money changed hands, their attitude shifted. They began treating me like a second-class citizen. I drove them to some of the most beautiful scenery you could find, places that rarely left people speechless, but they just seemed disappointed. One of the places was a ski town popular with celebrities, and they were just like, it's okay. We've seen better. I can't deny I was a little offended by their indifference, but whatever. They were never outright rude during the day, but they were surprised when I didn't buy lunch for them. As I stated in the contract, they were paying for my time. Food was on them. When I got back to town and dropped them off at their hotel, things got interesting. The wife said, "You can just park in the back and leave the keys at the desk. Tell them they're for the Smith family." I replied, "I'm sorry, what? The truck? Just park it in the back? We might use it later." I told them, "This is my truck, and I actually do this as a side gig. I'm not leaving it here, and it's not part of the deal." The wife condescendingly looked me up and down and said, "Oh, please, there's no way you can own a vehicle like this. It obviously belongs to the company you work for." I told her that I indeed did this as a side job and offered to show her my license and registration if she wanted. Then she demanded to speak to my boss. I thought about just driving off as it was around 8 in the evening, but then I had a better idea. I called my supervisor at my real job. Let's call him Dan. Dan has been in the oil field for 14 years and can be quite blunt, but he's a good supervisor. He knew what I did on my days off and even sent people my way a few times. He answered, and I said, "One of my clients is demanding to speak with my boss, so here she is," and handed her my phone. The wife looked so smug as she took the phone, as if she was about to tear me a new one to my boss. Sounding smug, she said, "I tried to tell your driver to leave the truck here so we could use it, but he lied and says he owns it." All of a sudden I could hear Dan yelling, "Are you out of your mind?" I couldn't discern anything else, but I knew he gave her a good verbal thrashing. She walked to the window, handed me my phone, and said, "He wants to talk to you," before walking away. My boss said, "That fix your problem?" I replied, "Yeah, thanks, Dan." He said, "Any time, brother." Friends, I've never understood this at all. The fact that people talk to one another like that. I've read so many stories about entitled people, and sometimes I can't even believe the conversations, like talking to someone on the phone you don't know and asking if they're out of their mind, or judging someone condescendingly and saying they can't afford this or that. It's absolutely absurd. I'm pretty sure I've only ever met nice people in my life, because that's not how you interact with someone. Come on, my friends. Next story. So, I was raised in a traditional household where I was taught to always respect my elders, both people who were a little older than me and much older than me. This also meant that if someone was rude to me or disrespectful, that I should not speak up because it was considered rude. That's how it is in our culture, and sadly, it's ingrained into my brain, and it's a work in progress to try to overcome. So, whenever I'm faced with an uncomfortable situation with an elder, I usually clam up and stay silent. My husband and I had been together for about 5 years when we finally got married. He also comes from a traditional family where his parents got a lot of say in big decisions with the kids. A lot of the times we were affected by our parents' decisions. Nothing crazy big, but it had to do with a lot of religious relics in our home, what the house number should be, how often we needed to visit our house of worship, etc. And for the most part, it never bothered us, especially because both of our parents lived in another city. Even our wedding was affected by our parents because we had to have a special ceremony, and they just had to invite distant relatives and friends that neither of us knew, because that's how it is in our culture. It was frustrating because my husband and I paid for our own wedding, therefore, we had to pay for several extra guests that came along with our kids, which ended up costing us a lot of extra money. But we did it because it was easier to cede to the parents than fight. A lot of the time, we gave in because it was easier than battling it out, and our parents lived in another city. It's not the best way to go about things, but it's how we dealt with it. Fast forward several years, and I now have a beautiful baby girl. It was a struggle to get to this point because it took over a year of trying to be able to conceive. I chalked it up to my body needing time to adjust because I had been on birth control for over 15 years. But I can't say I don't feel blessed and lucky to have gotten to this point. My mother-in-law never helped my stress levels with the incessant pestering of why I hadn't gotten pregnant yet, and that I needed to try harder because it was so easy for her and she had 5 kids. Okay, Mom, I'll just will my body to become pregnant. When I was finally pregnant, the amount of nagging about what to eat, what not to eat, how much to pray, etc., was not fun either. I finally fought back a little right after I gave birth. Upon the baby girl's new arrival, our families had come to visit for a few days. During her visit, my mother-in-law announced that she decided that she would live with us for a few months to help us with the new baby, and was adamant that I followed tradition and not leave the house for 100 days. I already was stressed enough with having a high-risk pregnancy, with her calling me every day to give advice, and there was no way that I was going to have her live with us, nor was I going to be confined to the house with her for 100 days. My husband and I respectfully declined her offer, stating that although we appreciate the offer, we'll be fine, especially because my husband would be home for the first few weeks to help out. My mother-in-law was offended, but she didn't say anything directly to me to dispute, thankfully. But she did ask a few more times here and there, "Are you sure you don't want me to stay with you?" I also think my husband said something discreetly to her on the side, which I'm forever thankful for. He's never admitted it, but it's just a feeling I have. So, the next few months were passed in relative peace with a lot of video calls and phone calls with a lot of advice because she, quote, successfully raised 5 kids, and therefore she knows better. I normally just smile and nod and say, "Thanks, Mom," and do what I think is best for the baby. So, what kind of advice did she give? Well, to name a few, do not burp the baby, the hard slapping on the back will hurt the baby, don't give baby tummy time, they might suffocate if they put their face down. Put on like 10,000 layers of clothes on the baby since they're always cold. Shave the baby's hair because it's dirty, it was in the placenta the whole time and needs to go. I refuse to do this because I wash the baby's hair with soap and hair falls out and is replaced all the time. Don't make the baby laugh, it will overexcite them and make their heart work too hard. Don't do bicycle movements with a baby, it'll hurt her spine and legs. Our pediatrician suggested us to do this because our baby was extra gassy after feedings and would cry and cry for hours because she couldn't pass gas. Don't let the baby cry. When I asked her sarcastically how I was supposed to stop a crying baby, she just told me to tell her to stop crying. Right. She also said that if the baby's tongue is stained from milk, to give her a spoonful of honey every day until it goes away. We didn't. But for those of you who don't know, there is a risk of botulism with honey, even if it's pasteurized. It's recommended to not give honey to kids for the first year. So now you have a better idea of my mother-in-law. Keep in mind she means well, it's just that she doesn't show it in the best way possible, and a lot of her information or advice is extremely outdated. Anyway, on to the story. Both my father and mother-in-law had come into town again for the weekend to visit. Baby girl is 5 months old at this point. During the visit, my mother-in-law invited some relatives over to see the baby. While they were here, one of the aunties and kids kept calling my baby a boy, saying things like, "Oh, he's so cute, what a cute boy." One of the kids asked me why I dressed the little baby boy in pink, and I kindly told him it's because it's a baby girl. He was embarrassed but corrected himself afterwards. I get it. Babies at that age look pretty gender neutral. It's no big deal. Well, my mother-in-law thought it was a big deal. After everybody left, she kept bringing up her disapproval of how everyone thought her precious baby granddaughter was mistaken as a boy and that we need to give better indicators that she's a girl, such as dressing her up in more slightly girly clothes, putting a bow on her head, etc. My husband and I reassured her that that's not a problem. She's a baby. People are going to make mistakes all the time. She dismissed our comments and continued to grumble about her disdain that if people kept thinking she was a boy, she'll grow up thinking she's a boy. Okay there, Mom. We didn't think much of it, but boy did we regret it. That same weekend my husband and I went out for a dinner date, the first one in nearly 6 months since we had baby girl, and I was very grateful to my in-laws for babysitting, even if it was only for a few hours. It was nice because they would also get to bond with her, and hopefully it prevents any separation anxiety from building up. Upon returning home, my mother-in-law excitedly runs over to greet us, saying she has a wonderful surprise for us. I'm all excited too, thinking maybe she bought baby girl a new toy or something. She led us over to the living room where baby girl is playing on her mats and cooing over some toys. She enthusiastically exclaims, "Notice anything different?" I'm looking over baby girl's hair and clothes, thinking maybe she bought her new clothes or hair accessories, but no, it's the same stuff that she was in when we left for dinner. But then I see it. It reflected the light and sparkled and caught my eye, and I let out a huge gasp. My mother-in-law giggled in glee because she mistakes my gasp of shock as joy. My mother-in-law squawks, "Isn't she beautiful now? No one will mistake her as a boy." She went and took my 5-month-old baby girl and got her ears pierced. I'm frozen at this point, stuck between horror and pure anger. I lifted my baby girl off the playmats, feeling my eyes sting with tears, and touched the tiny earlobes that now have a little pink stud in their fat, soft flesh. My husband is first to react, and he just snapped. I'll never forget the fury in his voice as he turned to his mom and said, "Are you crazy?" Thus followed a long argument between the mother and son, with me silently crying on the living room floor while holding my baby girl. I was upset for a couple of reasons. First, my husband and I had agreed to wait until she was maybe 7 years old to pierce her ears because in my personal experience, the ears can grow at a funky rate and the holes can get lopsided. This happened to me. My mom pierced my ears when I was 3, and now as an adult, one hole is slightly higher and closer to my head than the other. And second, I missed being there for my baby girl when she got her ears pierced for the first time. I don't remember much of their arguments, but I remember my husband saying something about how she had no respect for us as people and how she can't go around piercing babies' ears. She snapped back and said how he should be grateful for a mother that would go and do something like that for them, and then brought up something he did when he was a teenager or something, and how he needs to respect his elders. At one point, my mother-in-law asked me for my opinion on the piercings. She saw that I was crying and makes a comment regarding how I'm being ridiculous and disrespectful for not thanking her, and how any other woman that her son married would have gladly thanked her. I still said nothing. My husband, though, said everything for us and fought back hard, even as far as to say that she was irresponsible because we had no idea if she went to a reputable place and one of the instruments they used were dirty and caused an infection that could have cost her life. The night ended up with his mom in angry tears, saying how she's failed as a parent because her son doesn't respect her, and it's a good thing she's got 4 other kids who are grateful for her. The rest of the visit was a blur, with my husband and I no longer comfortable with leaving baby girl alone with his parents. We were always awkwardly hovering near them, even at home. I never said anything to my mother-in-law the rest of the visit, except for short answers to questions like where the toilet paper was stored. She never did apologize to us either. Our relationship with my mother-in-law was strange for a while. She didn't visit us for a few months, and the video chats and phone calls were not as often anymore. I felt like her pride prevented her from seeing the big picture, and she was fixated on making sure that everyone knew that her grandchild was a girl, not a boy. It's been half a year. And she's still not apologized to us for getting our daughter's ears pierced. And until this day, she's awkward at family gatherings and won't even come near our baby girl. My husband thinks that in her mind she's embarrassed of the whole situation and will not admit that what she did was wrong. What that mother-in-law did to OP's 5-month-old was not okay. Even if she thought she knew best, she should have clarified with OP and her husband first, because that's not her baby. In my opinion, she was super selfish and super entitled because she purely did it for the fact that everyone thought that OP's baby was a boy. Now that you've heard the story, if you were in OP's shoes and your mother-in-law went and did that, what would you do? Let me know in the comments below. And I do want to thank Melissa C. for emailing me this story. And I hope things work out with your mother-in-law in the future. These stories really struck a chord with me, and I'd like to share my views. The party store Karen story boils my blood. I've dealt with religious zealots judging holiday fun, but calling decorations satanic and letting kids wreck merchandise? Unacceptable. I respect the Wiccan employee's calm education attempt, but Karen's entitlement to dictate store inventory is absurd. Calling security was smart, you protected your business and staff. You're not horrible, far from it. Critics ignoring the destruction are enabling bad behavior. The Kmart cashier tale is a classic small-town showdown. I love how your tough exterior held up against that storm. The mom blatantly buying smokes for her kid, then assaulting you? Criminal. Spotting the chief of police as the chill customer was poetic justice. Her fleeing in panic must have been satisfying. I'd have savored that verbal thrashing too. Kudos for standing firm on the law. Teens like you showed real spine. The mother-in-law piercing the baby's ears without permission? Horrifying, I'm furious just reading it. Overstepping boundaries like that, ignoring modern advice on honey or burping, screams control freak. Dismissing your pain as ungratefulness? Toxic. I'd have reacted like your husband. Furious arguments and limited contact. No apology after months? She's too prideful. You're not overreacting. Protecting your child's autonomy is priority. If it were me, I'd enforce strict supervision forever. These tales highlight entitlement's ugliness, from store tantrums to family overreach. I'm inspired by the Ops's backbone. Standing up, even against elders, is heroic. More empathy, less control, folks. And that wraps up another episode of our Entitled People series. We survived another round of Entitled folks. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you missed the last episode of our Entitled People series, go check it out. I'll see you all in the next one.